All right, so I mentioned that what we were going to get into a lot of it, honestly, but let's go ahead and start out with a quote. This is going to be our third and last topic or quote on prosperity. So, prosperity doth best discover vice, but adversity doth best discover virtue. I'll go ahead and read it once more. Prosperity doth best discover vice, but adversity doth best discover virtue. So, good. Like the others, the Israelites are, in a lot of their eyes, experiencing lack, right? But out of this lack, they really do have intense virtue that comes out of it. But in reality, they are truly blessed. They are truly guided. Just for the presence of the Lord to be with them continuously and all the time in such His great way, right? He's physically in the tabernacle. His presence is there continually, much like He is with everyone else who is involved with the Lord outside of this, which we'll learn. But they're very, very blessed to have these prophetic messages come directly from God to Moses. That's a great blessing. But with that, there's people that are upset about that. They're realizing, well, aren't we all blessed, right? We're all blessed. We should all be able to receive these prophetic messages. We should all have power. We should all have control. We should all have that, right, power and control. And we should be able to have just as much authority as Moses and Aaron. But reality is that there's the foundation, which we have talked about. There's a structure, a strong structure that needs to be laid before the true greatness can come about these people. So, yes, prosperity doth discover vice. They're truly blessed, but people are getting almost jealous in a way. And then adversity best discovered virtue. So there will be adversity that they face, several bouts of adversity, but with that adversity becomes like cleansing. They're cleansed of the people who are doing harm. They're cleansed of a lot of things, which they'll really have their true virtue shine through that. So we'll learn about this here. Throughout this time, the Israelites are still receiving their manna. So that's kind of like their grain, or I wouldn't say grain because they had grain. It's just kind of like a supplemental food, right? Manna was something sent from heaven, directly from heaven, and it was like a flaky dust kind of thing, a flaky, frosty thing, heavenly food that fell kind of and settled on the grass, kind of like dew, right? As we have learned. And it says here, the manna was like coriander seed and looked like resin. So it was like a seed that they can grind up and they can make into like a dough or bread. So that was still being received from heaven. They were still getting that, which was nice, right? That was just a nice supplement that they could really survive off of if they wanted to. But the people were getting increasingly, I wouldn't say greedy, but they were just kind of demanding more. They were demanding meat, protein, more meat and protein, even though they had their flocks and things like that. They were just, they were living pretty good in Egypt. That's what they keep saying. The Israelites were living so good. They had all this variety of like fruit and vegetable, and they had whatever they could ask for, they had in Egypt. So they're feeling more in lack, even though they're gaining so much more. They just don't realize it. So they're starting to complain again. So the manna was coming, and they're wanting more. So it says, where can I get meat for all these people? Says Moses. They keep wailing to me, give us meat to eat. The Lord said to Moses, bring me 70 of Israel's elders who are known to you as leaders and officials among the people. Have them come to the tent of meeting, that they may stand there with you. I will come down and speak with you there, and I will take some of the power of the Spirit that is on you and put it on them. So again, they are complaining about the meat. They're complaining about, we don't have any power. Why can't we talk to the Lord? So God's hearing all of this, and he's getting increasingly frustrated. But he's saying, I will put some of the Spirit, and I'll put it on them. So he did not put it directly on any of the 70 elders that came with Moses. he put it on somebody outside of the tent of meeting. So it says, a young man ran and told Moses, Eldad and Medad are prophesying in the camp. So these two outside of the camp, I guess, right, were prophesying, and they were getting the spirit, right, and they were saying certain things. Anyways, they were saying something about, I guess, maybe the quail that are coming. It says, now a wind went out from the Lord and drove quail in from the sea. It scattered up 2 cubits deep it scattered them up 2 cubits deep all around the camp, as far as a day's walk in any direction. So the Lord answered them. They're like, okay, he's like, okay, if you want to complain, here you go. Here's your quail. And it really just kind of flooded the camp, right? 2 cubits deep all around the camp, as far as a day's walk in any direction. So it was so much more than they had anticipated. But it says here, while the meat was still between their teeth, and before it could be consumed, the anger of the Lord burned up against the people, and he struck them with a severe plague. Therefore the place was named Kibroth Hattaavah, because there they buried people who craved other food. So this was one of the first, I would say this is one of the first things that came against the people of Israel, the Israelites, in the camp, right? So the Lord gave them what they wanted, but to also teach them at the same time, he struck them with a plague. And people died, which is unfortunate, but that is just how it needs to go. Again, when we're talking about the foundation being laid, and the weaker of those individuals have to just be dealt with, because you can't build a foundation when people are a part of it and they're weak and crumbling. It doesn't make any sense. So it's a sad thing, but we'll learn there's much more to come, so it's not the end of it. So that was a big thing. They were upset about that. And then it stirred up this other jealousy. So it says, between Miriam and Aaron began to talk against Moses because of his Cushite wife, for he had married a Cushite. Right? So Miriam and Aaron, the people that are closest to Moses during this time, they began to even talk against Moses because of his Cushite wife, right? Because he married outside of the Israelite community. He married outside of the Levite clan and then all of the other Israelite families, which was, no harm done, right? Especially according to God's will. That's nothing to be ashamed of. But they talked against him, and they used that kind of arbitrary reasoning to talk against him, which is not good. It says, at once the Lord said to Moses, Aaron, and Miriam, come out to the tent of meeting, all 3 of you. So the 3 of them went out. He said, listen to my words. When there is a prophet among you, I, the Lord, reveal myself to them in visions. I speak to them in dreams. But this is not true of my servant Moses. He is faithful in all my house. With him I speak face to face, clearly, and not in riddles. He sees the form of the Lord. Why then were you not afraid to speak against my servant Moses? So here, the Lord discusses with all 3 of them, clearly, all 3 of them. He rarely talks to anybody but Moses. This might have also been the first time that he talked to all 3 of them, his voice, right? So he's saying, listen, this is how it is. You are not to talk against Moses. Do not speak against him. All of this stuff. And at the end of the day, we hear about this. We've heard about this before. Miriam was stricken with leprosy, and she was to stay outside the camp. They didn't move on until Miriam was healed, which she eventually was healed, and then she came back into the camp. But her skin, all of her skin turned a stark white. But that was her punishment for initiating this conversation against Moses. Then the Lord said to Moses, send some men to explore the land of Canaan, which I am giving to the Israelites. From each ancestral tribe send one of its leaders. From the tribe of Issachar, Igel, son of Joseph. And this was just, one example, but from each of the 12 tribes was a leader assigned to go explore or to go scout Canaan. When Moses sent them to explore Canaan, he said, "Go up through the Negev and on into the hill country." Then they gave Moses this account. "We went into the land to which you sent us, and it does flow with milk and honey. Here is the fruit. But the people who live there are powerful, and the cities are fortified and very large. We even saw descendants of Anak there." So they come back. They actually took something from a tree, I think it was a pomegranate or some kind of fruit, and they took it back to show Moses. But they said something interesting, I thought. "We even saw descendants of Anak there." And what does that sound familiar to? Maybe to some of you, if you are, paying attention to the alternate media. Anak is kind of like a new buzzword, or it comes from a new buzzword called the Anunnaki, right? They were the aliens, which I have mentioned before, that were kind of in charge of advancing or restructuring our DNA to make us more obedient, I guess you could say. So the Anak were also in the Bible biblically described as descendants of the oh, there's a dog, hold on. Where's the kitties? I don't know where the other cat went, but excuse me. The Anak were described as the descendants of the, why can I think of them? Not the seraphim. What were those angels? It did escape me. Hold on, let me just do a quick selection. What were we talking about with the flood? How these people were the ones that were still alive. They were like the angels or the sons of God. Why am I? Seraphim, Anak in the Bible. I know it says it here. Oh, Nephilim. Yes, the Nephilim. So they were also supposed to be, Anak were the descendants of the Nephilim, which were like the angels or sons of God that were on the earth. So they were described as superhuman, and they were here present on the earth at that time. Now their descendants were called the Anak, which does come from the word Anunnaki, which if you look that up, there's a bunch of videos on like who were the Anunnaki. It does start to talk about it, and it is a biblical reference. We do know that to be true. So it's interesting if you want to delve into it. But with this here, when they said we even saw descendants of the Anak, they were put in fear. The people of Israel were put in fear, and the people that were leading this scouting mission came back and they instilled a bunch of fear in the people. They're like, no way, we can't do this. This is going to be terrible. They're going to destroy us, all of this stuff. So this is what happens. Joshua, son of Nun, and Caleb, son of Jephunneh, who were among those who explored the land, tore their clothes and said to the Israelite assembly, "The land we passed through and explored was exceedingly good. Now may the Lord's strength be displayed just as you have declared." But again, they're saying it was great, but I don't know if we can do this. I think, we'll learn what happens. But the Lord is getting upset because they're becoming cowardice. The people are becoming cowardice. They're expelling a lot of fear and distaste with their condition, and this is what happens. The Lord says, "How long will this wicked community grumble against me? I have heard the complaints of these grumbling Israelites. These men who were responsible for spreading the bad report about the land were struck down and died of a plague before the Lord. Of the men who went to explore the land, only Joshua, son of Nun, and Caleb, son of Jephunneh, survived." So we heard about Joshua and Caleb. They were the ones saying, no, this is great, this is going to be fine, the land was exceedingly good. The land was amazing, it's going to be fine. So they did not die because they were spreading a good report. The others, however, were spreading the bad report and putting a lot of fear in the Israelites. So they all had died of the plague. And again, these were the leaders appointed to explore Canaan, right? No one is really safe at this point. Like, you can be a person of power, you can be a person of authority, and you can still, commit a wrong to the Lord, and you have to be dealt with accordingly. So that is something to think about. Even Miriam, right? She was dealt with, but these leaders had been passed. Shame, 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 shame. This is just the order of the things, you guys. It is intense reading about these things in the Bible, how much, destruction, even by the hand of the Lord, right? How could the hand of the Lord hurt his own people? People often get a little bit confused and conflicted, but really understanding the context and the bigger picture, and also to think about, were all these people banned to hell, right? Were they banned to eternal misery and suffering? Probably not. God probably just has another route for them to go. Say, if they want to exhibit fear and they're not ready to, take on their current mission, God will use them in another mission, and they will come back when the land has been more established, when they're ready, because God really wants strong soldiers. He wants strong people, dedicated people who aren't going to disrupt his plans, right? And that's just how it is. We're going to go ahead and go into the next part right after this. Let's see what we have here. We have part 5. All right. Yes, so we're going to go into some remedies. I'll catch you in a second.